I tell you what makes you feel anxious is if you get burgled, things like that, because that home invasion thing is just... It's awful. It's a really awful thing. Someone's been in your house and poking through your stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Home Secretary is now saying that crimes like that, what they call low-level crimes, must be investigated by the police. And she says the ignoring of low-level crime, which happens at the moment, is just unacceptable.
Suella Braverman has secured agreement from all of the country's 43 police forces to pursue every offence where there is a reasonable line of inquiry.
Yeah, well, it follows concerns that theft, in whatever its forms, has essentially been decriminalised because cases aren't really being solved, and to be honest, they're not really being looked into.
Well, Holly Whitbread is a Conservative councillor in Essex and is with us this morning in the studio. Good morning to you, Holly. What do you make of this plan?
I think this is good news, and I think it would be welcomed by members of the public. Actually, we've seen that the police actually tackle more crime than ever before, which is good news, and reach the highest level. But I think there is a concern that some of these low-level crimes, which aren't low-level if you experience them yourself, aren't being tackled in the way they should. So I think people will welcome this.
It's resources to do it, though. I mean, when Suella Braverman says every theft must be investigated, well... That's not really... With the best will in the world, that's not feasible, is it?
Well, we know the police are under a lot of pressure, but they are at the highest number of police officers ever. The police and crime commissioners across the country, it's their job to put pressure on the police force to try and deliver and try and actually hold some of these criminals to account.
You're a local councillor, Holly. You will understand the importance of trust in the police and how important it is the community feel as though when they do go to the police about something that matter is dealt with. Do you think that this could be a very positive thing in that sense, that going back to old school policing and actually fighting crime on the street?
Absolutely. I mean, if this is successful and we see more of these crimes tackled and addressed and punished, I think this will help build confidence in the police. And actually, you often hear people say there's not as many bobbies on the beat as there used to be. I know in my area we really have an emphasis on community policing. So actually, Essex Police have introduced town teams, which are really popular, where you've got kind of two bobbies on the beat who focus on towns, tackling crime and antisocial behaviour, but it's that visibility, and people do like that reassurance.
Is that good value for money?
It is if they are tackling some of these low-level crimes, whether it would be kind of pickpocketing or antisocial behaviour. But obviously it's about that kind of spread of resources and targeted as well. I know in my own area we've got kind of hired police officers in our council, and they really focus on what the local priorities are, whether it be antisocial behaviour on a estate, but actually also bigger crimes such as county lines.
You see, what I like about... We don't have any more, but we used to have a community officer, and he'd pop round for a cup of tea and all that sort of thing. And you can understand why people say, well, what are they actually doing that's fighting crime? But in a sense, if they're just there, if they're a visible presence, they can prevent crime, can't they?
Absolutely. I think it's good to have people there on the ground because it does act as a deterrent. But actually, I know in my own community there's concerns recently around kind of shoplifting, particularly in places like Boots, where people have just been coming in and stealing kind of low-value things. But actually, if you've got a police officer on the ground who the shopkeepers know, that's a really positive thing and helps tackle crime.
Yeah. You also think in looking at the criminality side of things, if you stop people in low-level crime situations, hopefully that would then stop them going on to do more serious offences later on in life.
Absolutely. It's often kind of a gateway to doing more. And I think Suella's also talked about more kind of action against low-level drugs. And actually, it can be the thing that kind of sparks off more criminality later in life. So I think it goes to the root of things, really tackling things at a low level to look at the bigger picture.
Can I ask you about S114 notices, which sound extremely dull, but it's important, actually, because it's being claimed that 30% of councils in some of the poorest parts of the country are thinking about these S114s, which effectively means they can't balance the books. Councils will be declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah, this is a real problem across the board, particularly for kind of those upper tier authorities which have social care in their responsibility. Post-pandemic, there have been more and more pressures, particularly kind of complex needs around children's social care, but also we live in an ageing population, and as a result of the pandemic, people perhaps with learning disabilities have more need for social care. So this is a real concern. As a county councillor, you see these pressures on a day-to-day basis, and actually it means that you can't do some of the nice-to-haves. So this is a real concern across the board.
But in terms of going... I mean, the idea of a council going bankrupt is very scary because of what they provide. However, presumably they wouldn't actually be allowed to... The government couldn't allow these councils to stop providing basic things, could they?
No, so in these circumstances, they still be providing statutory responsibilities. So social care, they continue to provide, and actually things like bin collections, you couldn't not provide those services. But what we have seen is increasing pressure, which actually means that you see cuts in things like youth services or some of the things that you don't have to do. And ultimately, as a council, it is about sound financial responsibility and management, which is really important. But there are these increased pressures, and what we have seen is a lot of councils take risks to bring in other forms of revenue, but actually in the current economy we're in, investment in property isn't having the same generation.